Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020, Week 24 and 25 Meta Preview. So, we are back to regular fixtures for the Overwatch League season, and we're heading into Week 24, 25 and 26 ahead of the Countdown Cup, which will be the last tournament ahead of the playoffs later this year. But, as it's Week 24 and 25 coming up, we're going to have a new hero pool. Obviously, slightly different to the way hero pools started out. They are 2-week hero pools now, and we don't have hero pools, obviously, in the tournaments or in the last week of regular matches of that month. So, this is going to be the new hero pool for weeks 24 and weeks 25. And this is going to be super duper interesting because there is some very big heroes being locked out of the rotation, and it means we could see some shifts from different teams. Now, as a reminder, in weeks 21 and 23, 21 to 23, I should say, the weeks covering the Summer Showdown and the last week of regular matches in June, we didn't see any hero pool in effect, as I mentioned just now, but in weeks 19 and 20, we did see a hero pool which locked out Brigitte, D.Va, and Echo and Sombra in the DPS roles. They will all be back this time around. We're going to see some more Sombra and some Echo and some D.Va, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little more D.Va than we'd seen previously. This new batch of fixtures will also mark the Overwatch League moving on to the new patch that is currently on live servers for Overwatch. And it's quite a big patch because it contains some major changes. There's some pretty neat D.Va buffs in there, which could have an effect on her play rate. But possibly the big change is the Brigitte change, which means that she does not give armor as an overheal when she puts out armor packs. So she will heal them up to full health, but she won't give them additional armor anymore. And that is something that was very major to Brigitte's kit, especially at the highest level, because that's what was enabling the Tracers and the Genjis to go ham in the back line, because they weren't that one-shot kill anymore. They were a little bit tougher, a little bit more difficult to break down, and they won't have that with Brigitte anymore. So it'll be interesting to see if Brigitte struggles a little bit more in the meta now. But that hasn't had an effect for a pick rate on live servers and comp, by the way, just to mention that. But let's get into this then. Support we start off with, as always. And as I said, Brigitte is coming back. We are going to lock out the sniping DPS Ana. And I don't think we've seen Ana banned this year so far. Ana is always very good at the high level, constant healing output, great utility kit. And we always love to see the Ana sleep in the Genji, right? When he's coming in for the blade. But yeah, that's not going to happen. I don't think this is too major in terms of meta shifting. Ana wasn't the meta right now, I wouldn't say. We've seen a lot of Jean-Baptiste. That can continue with this comp. We have seen previously a lot of Brigitte. Whether we will see as much Brigitte now, we might see more Lucio in place of Brigitte because of that armor nerf. It's difficult to tell. I thought initially when I saw those changes that it would really hit Brigitte hard and we'd see a lot more Lucio. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. They may still keep Brigitte for her backline protecting effects. But Ana, it's always a loss to see Ana gone. There's some great players that will not be able to run that Ana, like Jonak, like Fielder. But I don't think it'll be too major. One hero in the support category that I think may have a little bit of a resurgence is Moira. Simply because of the nature in which the comps we might see. But yeah, it'll be super interesting. The biggest loss with losing Ana is obviously that nano boost. And a nano Genji, a nano blade, is always something very, very powerful. But whether that will have an effect on Genji, it's possible. Simply because of what else is being banned as well. Yeah. Let's get on to the rest of the bans and talk about it overall at the end. But moving on to our tanks, and tank meta in the Summer Showdown and previous to that was heavily dominated by Orisa Sigma double barrier, mainly because, well, D.Va wasn't there, so in terms of damage negation, there's not many better than the Sigma with a barrier and his kinetic grasp. Sigma, I honestly thought coming into this hero pool that it'd either be Orisa or Sigma that was banned, considering their absolutely ridiculous playtime. We saw a little bit of Reinhardt during the showdown and all that, but Orisa dominated heavily. Now, Orisa is a pretty major part of the meta we saw during the summer showdown, because it was all orchestrated around the halt into accretion, because you would see a lot of, especially the top teams like Paris, San Francisco, and Philadelphia, they'd be using that, they'd be using the pull, then they'd be accretioning into the pull, and then they would be pumping damage into that pull location as well, meaning that it was well, not very likely, but there's a very distinct possibility you would get a pick from that. Also, Genjis, if they're close enough, they can dash through it, get a ton of ult charge. It's bonkers. There's no pull now, and that is one of Orisa's main draws when it comes to playing her. Her pull is just bonkers at times. So this means that the way in which comps will be played will be quite drastically different. In terms of the tank line we will see, I think it's going to be depending on what teams want to do. You can run double barrier, you'd just be running Reinhardt Sigma, which we have seen on certain maps before when teams want to go more brawly. The issue is with this, you're not going to have any static comps, you're not going to have the real slow grind comps, because that's what Orisa is there. That's Orisa's forte. There's no other main tank that is good at orchestrating these really slow grind, breakdown, spam comps. Orisa is fantastic at that. So, yeah, the way I see it is we go one of either two ways. Dive. We always bring Dive up. Winston D.Va. With D.Va back, Winston D.Va is very much a possibility. So that's a possibility as well. And obviously the Reinhardt. Now, whether Reinhardt will be paired with a D.Va or a Sigma is up for debate. Because, at the start of the season, we were heavily in a Reinhardt D.Va meta. So it's possible we go back to that. D.Va, again, has got some interesting buffs, including a reduction to her time for defense matrix. So that's a pretty major buff, which could make a significant difference at the high level. So that could push her over the mark in terms of getting in instead of Sigma. Another comp we have seen is Winston Zarya, and that is a possibility that comes out again. But I think that would be benefiting some teams and not others. Soul Dynasty, I'm looking at you. But it's going to be interesting with no Orisa. I obviously want to see Dive. I think we all want to see Dive, and we're going to see much more active comps with this, because it's going to be a lot more movement on the field. It's going to be a lot less slow. It's going to be a lot more movement with Reinhardt. This also means that we may well see more Lucio, especially if teams gravitate towards the Reinhardt, because Lucio, Reinhardt, you boost your Reinhardt in, you get into that brawl. So it depends whether we go down a brawl route, which is more likely to see the Reinhardt, it's more likely to see the Lucio, it's more likely to see, well, either a Sigma or a D.Va, and whether we go down the dive route. And that would mean, obviously, the Winston, the D.Va, Anna not being there is a little bit of an issue for dive, because she can't pump in that long range healing, which is going to be an issue. And when we saw OG dive, we saw quite a bit of Lucio Zen. That is not enough in this day and age. It's not enough healing output, so that's a bit of an issue. And that's why I would actually gravitate towards the more Reinhardt Brawly comp coming out rather than the dive. We could see it with Batista, maybe Batista Zen, but that was generally used with the Orisa comps. So I think Zen also does badly from this Orisa being banned. I'm not gonna lie, Zen is very, very squishy, and so he doesn't really last long in Brawly comps. He doesn't really last long in dive these days either. So yeah, I think if we were to go anywhere, it would be down the Brawly comp route, which may indicate Reinhardt Sigma and still double barrier, which would be a little bit frustrating. I don't think we will see Reinhardt Zarya. I think that's a comp that is just not viable at the top level right now. But it's possible we see Reinhardt D.Va. That's the way I would go. I would go down Brawl comp route, but that means you could play the Brigitte, you could play the Lucio, or you can play the Moira. You can play the Batista in that if you want to. So it'd be interesting. Again, this is me spitballing here. I mean, I might be completely wrong. I'm not gonna lie. This is me just making assumptions on what I see in front of me. But let's take a look at our DPS, and this is where it gets hella spicy. So in the Summer Showdown, we saw quite a bit of Widowmaker. I'm sure you are quite aware of the Thsi pop-off on Rialto, which then led to EQO getting the most clutch one of the most clutch Genji plays I think we've ever seen, if not we have ever seen. So Widowmaker featured quite heavily. She's featuring quite heavily alongside that dive hero, whatever it may be, normally a Genji at the moment. It's either her or Ashe, and I would expect it to be Ashe from now on, because Widowmaker is going to be banned for the next 2 weeks. Widow. I mean, Widow's... She's one shot, one kill, right? I think we all know the unlucky memes that go around with Widow. But she's always a great hero to watch at the highest level. I think the Summer Showdown demonstrated that. She's a fantastic hero for just watching people pop off. A massively bonkers hero. In terms of what this does for the meta, I don't think it actually interferes too much. Ashe is pretty darn good right now. I think we all know that. She's had a little bit of a nerf, but I don't think it's enough of a nerf to bring McCree in or anything like that. I think McCree and Soldier are suffering a little bit. Well, Soldier is certainly suffering, but McCree is suffering a little bit as well. Widowmaker and Ashe are definitely the dominant hit scan. And if someone is going to go long-range hit scan right now, I'd be willing to put money on the fact that it would be Ashe that they would pick in this meta. The question is, will we see long-range hit scan? Now, that is heavily dependent, again, on the meta. And if we go to dive, we may see less of it, because Tracer becomes more viable with the second DPS that's banned. And the second DPS being banned is Mei. Yes, I love this hero pool. Orisa and Mei banned? Yes, give it to me every week. Mei being banned then. Mei didn't see the biggest playtime in the Summer Showdown. We are lucky that we didn't get Kenji banned. But Mei is very impressive. She works very well in these brawly comps. So that's a down marker for that Reinhardt brawl comp. But with Mei being out, that means that the Mei Reaper brawl comp is out of the window. Reaper probably wouldn't be that effective without the Mei. So that puts that out of the window, which means that dive is much more of a possibility. It's much more likely that we could see Tracer in play. The Genji was already in play, so I think we will still see quite a bit of Genji, although the lack of nano boost is possibly a very big problem for him. Which means that teams might actually gravitate more towards the Tracer Ashe, which we saw in the Mei Melee, which would be a benefit for someone like Florida Mayhem. Problem is, again, still no Orisa Sigma, which was again very dominant back then as well. So Mei being banned means it's harder to pull off the brawl comps. We could see Reaper McCree brawl comp maybe, with like a protect the president sort of thing going on with McCree, but it's difficult to tell. I mean, I just want to say, hey guys, dive's going to be back. This is going to be an awesome couple of weeks of fixtures, but I can't say that because dive has weaknesses to a lot of heroes that are now in the game, and that's why we don't see it as often. Now, again, it can depend on region as well. I would expect the Asian region to pick up a bit more of the Sombra during this 2 weeks, and that will mean that probably dive has a little bit of a resurgence there. We've seen more dive, I think, in APAC region than we have in NA. So APAC's willing to experiment more, which is very, very interesting. Echo is something we could go over. Echo with no Widowmaker in the pool. Echo has a little bit more free reign. No more Ana, which means she has a little bit more free reign again. But there is still an Ashe there to counter that Echo. So I wouldn't expect a massive upturn in Echo play. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Genji hurts from the Ana loss. I think Genji also hurts from the Orisa loss because there's no dash through the Holt, or there's no damage into the Holt, which gets him blade extremely quickly. Widow is not too much of a problem, just whack an Ashe in there. And May being banned makes Brawl a little harder to pull off. I think if May hadn't have been banned, we could have seen the resurgence of Rhine Sigma, or Rhine Diva alongside the May Reaper, maybe. And we would have gone for full head-on Goats 2.0. But I don't think we're going to see that. So I still think we will see Reinhardt from quite a few teams. I think in APAC, teams like the Shanghai Dragons will play the Winston. I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Seoul Dynasty go down the route of playing the the Winston Saria. That wouldn't surprise me either. And in terms of what other teams are going to play, it can be kind of difficult to tell. But yeah, this is going to be a super duper interesting couple of weeks of fixtures. And no May and no Orisa means we're going to see some interesting stuff, especially with no Orisa. Double barrier, as we know it, is out of the window. The comps that were being used and how they were being used in the summer showdown are no longer possible for the next 2 weeks. So it's going to be an interesting time, and I'm also extremely interested to see if the buffs to Diva and the nerfs to Brigitte have a big impact, because Brigitte has featured a lot this season. Not as dominant as she was during Goats, but she has featured a lot this season, and I'm wondering whether that over armor on the packs will make a big difference, because that's the way it was used for those dive heroes. But I am going to leave it here for this one. Keep an eye on that meta, because it's going to be super duper interesting. I'll be back tomorrow for the preview ahead of week 24, which is going to be super duper interesting. It's a chunky week. We start off on the Friday as well, which is going to be super duper interesting. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.